When it comes to animated villains, your mind may go right to Disney and Pixar. Chills go down anyone's spine when they hear names like Frollo, Lotso Huggin Bear, Syndrome, or Hades. However, what about those villains at the other studio? We already did a video on Dreamworks Heroes, but today, it's time for the villains, and we're gonna be as inclusive as possible. If they are the villain in their movie, then they count. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge. This is Dreamworks Villains, evil to most evil.
Oh, merry man!
We're gonna start out with the least vile and work our way up to the cruelest of the bunch. These foes must have at least a major presence in the story, be it as a good guy that is actually evil or a villain through and through. First up, with our most heroic villain, we have the Gorg. In any other movie, this guy could easily be the main character. He ended up getting his incubator, which hosts the rest of his species, stolen by the Boov.
Why is it called the Shusher?
Shush!
Thanks to Smack grabbing it, he has made it his mission to track down the Boov and get it back no matter what the cost. This includes blowing up planets that the Boov have taken for themselves to seek refuge. He's pretty much an alien version of the Doomslayer. He rips and tears through planets until he saves his species. He could have done without destroying planets. However, think of it from his side. He was the last of his kind, and the people that took his chance at repopulation were fleeing from him. We're sure any human would do whatever it takes to ensure that humanity lives on. Even in the end, he does make peace with Owen-Tip, and eventually helps his species flourish again.
Apparently that Gorg is Last Gorg.
He just needed to be the star of his own movie, no pun intended, to flesh him out. If you're listening to us, Dreamworks, that Gorg Doomslayer movie would make big money, I promise. For our silver medal of least evil, we have the Fusas. Going to Madagascar, the group run into them terrorizing the lemurs. They're only stopped by Alex's roar and seem to scurry off.
Well, how to do?
However, as Alex gives in to his native side of being a lion, with his best friend normally being a meal for said lions, he heads off from the group, giving them the perfect chance to strike. This is just another one of those unfortunate truths in the world. It's nature. Animals gotta eat. And no matter how many vegans try to get their animals to go vegan, some animals need meat to survive. And they're called predators. It would be nice if they found an alternative, but that's just their genetics telling them to eat meat. And you really can't blame them that much.
Come and get it!
For our bronze medal of least evil, we have the exterminator, the Verminator, Dwayne LaFontant.
Verminator is on the job.
He's called to deal with RJ and his friends, ever since they started going over the hedge to steal food from the humans. The animals may have to deal with Gladys Sharp at the start, but once this exterminator is called into action, the stakes really amp up. From the view of the animals, he definitely is evil. He takes great joy in capturing animals and stopping their quest in stealing from the humans.
Adios, animal.
However, from the perspective of the humans, he's just a normal guy. He may take his job a bit too seriously. However, it is just his job, no matter how cruel it may seem. He may be a villainous crook to these woodland fellows, but he's still just a typical jerk from the perspective of people. Moving on to the Queen of Rock, Queen Barb. First meeting her in Trolls World Tour, she plans on eradicating all other forms of music, save her own music, rock. Her reason for this obsession is that she believes that there can be no peace amongst trolls as long as they remain divided by music.
I will unite the trolls under one music.
This may seem like an odd restraint, but she has been through a situation like this before with the pop trolls, stealing all the magic strings from the other kingdoms and trying to make pop music the only form of music. The irony of Barb doing the exact same thing she hates pop music for is a bit lost on her. That said, she still does believe she's doing the world a favor. She has a great deal of loyalty and love towards her own clan of the Rock Trolls, with even more respect for her father, and even rocking with the kid during Crazy Train. She's basically the opposite of Poppy, as someone who takes a more realistic view in the world and realizes that everyone is different, while Poppy believes that all are the same. That said, she certainly has no qualms wiping out other tribes of music and forcing everyone into being a rock-loving troll.
It will never invade anyone's brain again.
However, she does learn her lesson that being unique is cool, and not only stop her quest, but also befriend Poppy. She's a bit more dubious than our lesser foes, but she does at least believe she's actually doing good. and not evil for the sake of it. Our female counterpart to the Verminator, we have Captain Chantal Dubois, the main villain of Europe's Most Wanted. Unlike the other two foes of the franchise, she is out for blood, specifically to kill Alex.
To hunt the king of the beast!
As we know the line through first-hand viewing, he's a pretty good guy and doesn't deserve to die. Plus, Dubois is still pretty scary, trying to kill the animals after they're behind the zoo walls, and even claiming to have punched a snake when she was 7. But once again, this is all about perspective. To her, this group of animals just popped up randomly one day, and were a disturbance to the humans in Europe. Plus, 2 of the members of this group are a hippo and a lion, 2 animals that any human don't want chasing after them. It's obvious as to why she was called in the first place. This doesn't make up for her going out of her jurisdiction just to try and kill them, and with how much she loves the thrill of the hunt, and as an animal control officer, we wouldn't be shocked if she tried to kill even more innocent animals before. Now we have social worker Mrs. Grunion. Her role in the movie is to try and get Peabody and Sherman separated at all cost. Her role isn't that big as the rest of the cast, but she is still the villain of the movie. Now, granted, the idea of a dog raising a human is a bit of a head-turner, to put it nicely.
A dog can never be a suitable parent to a little boy.
However, Peabody is no average dog. He has won 2 Olympic medals, is a licensed chiropractor, and found ways to help save energy and promote world peace. He has already proven himself to everyone else, and Mrs. Grunion's reason for still trying to park them comes off as her just wanting to torment the 2. She's even tried to get Peabody executed for biting her arm after she tried to pull Sherman away from him.
I'd like to report an assault. A bite.
And what does she get for all this? Marrying King Agamemnon, albeit by staying in the past. It may seem very lenient, however, given how the actual Greek tragedy goes. It doesn't look all that good for her. It's a sad day for human history when a dog is a better human than you. Next up on the chopping block, we have the one chopping chickens, Mrs. Militia Tweety. She's basically the warden of all the chickens, forcing her chickens to keep laying eggs for her. If they can't do that, then they have to die for her chicken pot pies. And with a grueling choice, it's no wonder these chickens want to fly away from this coop.
We're making this. We need these things. Can you get them?
Alright, nothing that abnormal. Still awful towards the chickens, but that's just business, right? Well, what isn't business is her treating the chicken coop like it's a military camp, from how it's set up to scaring the chickens by whipping her glove. She also seems to have no qualms when it comes to killing chickens, even enjoying it. She's also abusive towards her husband. He tries his best to help her out, even warning that the chickens may be trying to escape, only to get dismissed and kicked for his efforts.
It's all in your head, Mr. Tweety. Say it.
She may start off like a farmer who's a bit too excited about her role, but in the end, we get to see just how vile this farmer is. Up next, we have the rabbit hunter, Victor Quartermaine. The enemy to Wallace, Victor is the opposite to Wallace and Gromit's humane pest control, more than happy to shoot the rabbits on sight. His intention is to marry Lady Toppington, and he doesn't want Wallace mucking his plans up.
I therefore bid you good day.
After seeing Wallace turn into the were-rabbit, Victor decides to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. Convincing the town to let him kill the were-rabbit, Victor tries to kill Wallace, only for Gromit to be 1 step ahead of him every single time. Even after believing that he's dead, he cheers for his victory, even if it meant he killed another human.
No one beats Victor Quartermaine.
Turns out he was okay, but attempted murder is still kinda terrible. You know you're an evildoer if you hate babies, like Francis Efrancis. This grown-up is a CEO of Puppy Co., the rival company to Boss Baby's business, Baby Corp. He actually used to work for Baby Corp, but got fired for being lactose intolerant and not being able to drink the special milk that keeps babies young.
I was getting old.
Now he's out for revenge, planning on striking back by erasing love for babies with love for dogs. Now, like everything in this movie, his actions and cruelty is dependent on just how true everything is. This film is being presented through the eyes of a kid after all, with the storyteller being a grown-up Tim, leaving plenty of chances for him to embellish. He also planned on sending Tim's parents on a one-way trip, but that could be more embellishing. to sound more interesting to his daughter.
There's plenty of love for everyone.
As awful as he is, we really can't be completely certain of his validity as a threat, thus his low spot. Up next is the lowly acclaimed animated film Shark Tale, and the villain Don Leno, the head of the shark gang. He and his shark associates are terrors amongst the other fishes. When Frankie, his son, dies, and Oscar takes credit for the kill, he sets his eyes on revenge against this fake shark slayer.
I want to find this guy, I want to know everything about him, I want to know where he lives.
There are two things we have to give credit for. One is that it's just nature, like the Fooses and their desire to eat lemurs, while the other is that he does have a reason for being angry at Oscar. Firstly, Oscar, in the eyes of the public at least, has not only killed Frankie, but Oscar also seemingly killed his other son, Lenny. That said, he is still rougher than needed for his group, treating his shark gang like a mafia, firing Sykes and forcing him to pay for protection, and even running a bar made up of sentient shrimps that are still alive.
You're a good person.
He does cool down a bit at the end, making peace with the fishes, so he isn't all that bad. But still, he was a leader of a shark gang, so he's still up here, just not as high as he could be. Our first Shrek villain on the list, we have the Fairy Godmother. A different take on the classic fairy tale fairies. This fairy seems sweet and innocent at first. She appears to Fiona and tries to make her life better. However, upon realizing that she's married to Shrek, her plans shift from trying to cheer her up to making sure Shrek stays out of the way so she can hook her up with her son, Prince Charming.
Put it away, Junior, you're still gonna be king.
The first time we see her, she does seem reasonable, wanting to make Fiona happy. Even if she hates Shrek, she doesn't resort to killing at first, and tries to just tell him that ogres don't get happy endings, using examples from older stories to get him to give up on his quest. If she wasn't found out, it's likely she wouldn't have to reveal her dastardly side. Out of all the Shrek villains, she's probably the one you can walk away from the easiest. For a villain that was intended to be a hero, we have the foe of Megamind, Titan. After presumably killing Metro Man, Megamind created Titan in order to be his new foe. Using Hal Stewart, a cameraman who is obsessed with Roxanne, he was the human that Megamind tried to turn into Titan.
Rise, my glorious creation.
However, Titan has proven to be nowhere near as heroic as the original. All he really cares about is getting it on with Roxanne. She really isn't interested in him, either as Hal or as Titan the superhero. This just leads to Titan getting angry and kidnapping and threatening to kill her, forcing Megamind to come out and face him. He's a subversion of the normal trope of the geek getting powers. That said, there are still worse villains out there, believe it or not. Up next, we have Poe's first villain, Tai Lung. Originally set to be the original dragon warrior, Master Oogway senses evil in his heart and had him locked up in prison after attacking Master Shifu without any care for his well-being. Escaping from prison, he sets back out to find the secret of how to become the dragon warrior.
I was beginning to think I'd been forgotten.
That said, this mindset was more or less sculpted into him thanks to Shifu's teachings, and when he was denied the chance to be the dragon warrior, it was the first time in his life being denied something he wanted. It was a result of poor parenting, as well as just being entitled. However, Tai Lung's own misdeeds still can't be undersold, like willing to kill anyone in his way, be it his own father figure, Shifu, or the real dragon warrior Poe. Even when he gets what he wants, be it Shifu apologizing to him or finding out the secret of the dragon warrior, he still isn't satisfied and tries to kill the first person he sees.
I'm gonna pee.
What could have been a great ally to peace has been lost thanks to poor parental skills and a lust for power. For our second Shrek villain, it's Prince Charming from Shrek the Third. After losing his beloved mother in the second movie, he became a theater performer, where, after being heckled too many times, he decides to rally an army together and take over the kingdom.
You'll be sorry.
We already are.
He ends up not only kidnapping Fiona, his mother, and the other princesses, but turns the kingdom into a palace for villains. To him, he promises to give these fellow crooks a true happily ever after. To be fair, the state of the kingdom could be worse, as we'll see later down the list. It wasn't even ruled by him for as long as other villains. He does appear invested in making his fellow villains happy, if so he could be happy as well. He loves his mother, and even has a little mural dedicated for her on his mirror.
I will restore dignity to my throne.
The worst Prince Charming really did was make everyone watch a play he wrote where he kills Shrek on stage. As much of a threat he is, he's still a child at heart, and thus doesn't rank any higher. Either way, this prince certainly isn't charming. Up next, we have the leader of the colony's army, General Mandible, one of the more serious villains in Dreamworks' roster. He's more of a stand-in for a political threat than others. He wishes to rebuild the colony in his own image, and he's willing to do some pretty horrible stuff. He's willing to send his own soldiers out on what is basically suicide runs, killing and letting other ants that he sees as weak die off, and even planning on flooding them all.
That's suicide.
Exactly.
He really doesn't have any redeeming qualities. He believes that all the other ants are insignificant and that only he matters. He views himself as the top ant and is the colony in of itself. For a small ant in a single colony, he has been proven to be capable of a lot of damage. For Puss in Boots' own personal villain and childhood friend, we have Humpty Alexander Dumpty. When Puss was tricked into helping Humpty rob a bank, and while Puss was seen as the villain, Humpty wasn't far behind, being arrested as Puss ran off.
This is the money of the people. This is all they have.
In the present, Humpty tricks Puss into joining him on a trip to the giant's castle to get the gosling that lays golden eggs to help restore his lost honor. This, however, turns out to be a trick by the foul egg, as he planned on having Puss arrested by the town guards as he reaped the rewards of being seen as a hero. That said, what puts him higher up than the others is that he knows that the gosling's mother would come back and destroy the town just to get her baby back. However, thanks to Puss getting through to Humpty's hard shell, metaphorically I mean, Humpty ends up redeeming himself a bit by helping Puss lead the gosling and goose away from town and even sacrificing himself to keep Puss safe. While he did prove himself in the end, planning on destroying an entire town is something very hard to overlook. Hope you're hungry for frog legs, because the toad is next. The toad originally was a pet for an upper-class family. In fact, he was Prince Charles's pet, at least until he was flushed down and replaced with a rat, giving him a hatred for all rats. That said, this doesn't prevent him from trying to be civil with Roddy, happy to have another upper-class figure be with him in the sewers. At least, he was happy until Roddy accidentally destroyed some priceless artifacts, which would understandably make anyone mad.
Ice them boats.
However, Toad's anger is much worse than anyone else's. He plans on flooding the place because he hates it down there so much, and he really hates the rats. The only positive is that he cares for all his tadpoles. How a male frog was able to get tadpoles, we'll never know. But it is a bright spot on his otherwise bleak list of misdeeds. Our next foe comes from the Penguins of Madagascar spin-off movie, Deborah. Dave the Octopus.
Dave!
Once just an octopus in a zoo, he ended up constantly getting upstaged by penguins for being cuter than him. His plan is to make penguins unlikable and turn them into mindless forces of chaos by making them ugly. That said, judging by how stunned he was to see the machine blow up, it's likely that he didn't plan on killing them, just making them rejected like he was. That said, it doesn't save him from being evil. Even when he feels empty from his revenge, he decides to just fill this emptiness with more vengeance. He knows that turning all the penguins into monsters won't make octopuses any more liked, but it will still make him happy by making penguins hated.
Helen, hunt them down. Not William, hurt them.
Not only that, but seeing the collateral damage that the mutated penguins were causing, it's easy to consider him to be a threat to humanity. Overall, for as nonsensical as he is, he's still very capable of being a threat. Next up, we have Scar, or rather, his faker, Makunga. He is the rival to Alex's father, Zuba, and wants to take control of the land and animals from him. His way of going about this is tricking Alex into thinking he was getting into a dance-off, when it was actually a fight. After gaining control, he doesn't even seem concerned that the animals are going to get dehydrated, even challenging a young animal to go look for water elsewhere.
You'll have to look for water off the reserve.
With someone like Scar as his inspiration, it's easy to see why he's so vile and hated. His beliefs as to why he deserves to be the ruler come down to him thinking he looks better than Zuba and that he's smarter than him. He didn't cause the deaths of many of his own kind, but with how he was willing to just let the rest of the animals go without water, that definitely deserves a spot this high up. Don't laugh now. Up next is Professor Poopy Pants. With a name that ridiculous, it's obvious that he would be laughed and mocked at. After getting his prize at a science competition, ruined by everyone laughing at his name, he vowed vengeance and started scheming to make everyone into a zombie that doesn't know how to laugh or be happy.
They hate laughter and children, and I've got a cage in a briefcase.
With George and Harold making a comic about his last name being funny to them, he goes full villain mode and tries to zap away at the energy and happiness of kids. At least what little remaining energy and joy these kids have from being at school. In the books, Gerald and Harold's comic was what drove him to villainy. Here, he wasn't that great of a guy to begin with. Even when making inventions that could save humanity, he seems more worried about his fame and respect rather than actually doing good deeds. He doesn't even seem interested in reforming, shutting down George and Harold's attempts at making peace with him. Just goes to show you that when your name is P.P. Diarrhea Stein Poopy Pants Esquire, your life really can't get much better.
Stop it! Stop laughing!
Going back to Shrek's first film, we have Lord Farquaad. To put it lightly, he enforces the kidnapping and selling of other fairy tale creatures. This leads to the fairy tale creatures being shipped out to Shrek's swamp, forcing him to head out to meet with Farquaad and strike a deal to get his swamp back.
Hey, don't look at me, I didn't invite them.
He would then give Shrek the task of retrieving Fiona for him to marry. Now, Farquaad is clearly a dictator. He's forcibly removing certain beings of a group he considers undesirable from his society. We're dealing with a war criminal in the early stages of some serious crimes against humanity. He certainly wouldn't be considered as an ideal husband. He not only uses his powers to kick the fairy tale creatures out of their home, he also forces others to go get Fiona for him, even if it means death. The only reason he even wants to marry Fiona is so that he could be a king legally. He even decides to lock her in a dungeon so that he can maintain his royalty by technicality.
I'll have you locked back in that tower!
Needless to say, it's very hard to pity him when he gets eaten by a dragon. Up next on our list, we have Dr. Zara. At first, it looks like Mr. Burnish is the true villain, while Zara is the true animal lover of the duo. However, Burnish is actually not that bad of a guy. He saw a Yeti when he was younger and wanted to prove everyone who didn't believe him.
No footprints. Nothing.
He even ordered his troops to not shoot Everest, the Yeti, when he was protecting the kids. So, who is the main villain? Well, it's Dr. Zara. She doesn't care about either the lives of animals or humans and wants to sell the Yeti for money. When we first meet her, she seems nice and invested in the well-being of animals, even having a pet mouse. However, once Burnish tries to backtrack on his mission, Dr. Zara takes up control, even tossing aside her mouse, being disgusted by it.
If you want your 10%, you'll get rid of them.
Zara ends up proving to be much more ruthless, pushing Yi off of a bridge and implying that she wants to kill off Peng and Jin as well. Keep in mind, they're all children. She doesn't even care for Everest's safety, even if she needed him alive. What we thought was a nice girl at first turned out to be one of the colder villains that Dreamworks created. Next up, we have the goddess of chaos, Eris. Her purpose in life is only one thing: to cause chaos just because she's bored. Sure, there's a difference between chaos and evil, but she definitely crosses that line.
Glorious chaos.
She may have a fondness for her pets, the constellations that formed animals, and she doesn't raise her voice, and even playfully hits on Sinbad. However, she is still the goddess of chaos. She delights in causing destruction and mayhem, even if it means the death of others. She's been doing this for as long as she's been alive, just because she would have felt bored otherwise. She was the one that kickstarted the movie by stealing the Book of Peace.
All the pieces are coming together.
She does end up having to return the book, but given how she didn't want to be there, and that always keeping promises is one of the few rules that the old Greek gods always had to follow, that can't hardly count for much. As a goddess of chaos, she can technically do worse, but we don't want to take our chances with her regardless. The next villain that we're serving is the chef from Trolls. This chef hosts a party every year where she gets the trolls eaten by cooking them for the Birkins. The thing is, they really don't need to eat them to be happy, and the chef just does it in order to keep control of all the trolls. This would let her take full control of the kingdom by overthrowing the king.
A calm troll is a tasty troll.
She claims that this is in order to keep everyone happy. However, she knows this is a lie and just wants to keep control. She doesn't mind damning an entire race to just be in charge of the Birkins, making her pretty evil. When she isn't getting her way, she has to resort to trying to kill others.
Guards!
finish her.
With attempted genocide under her belt, she definitely earns a spot this high up. This slate into the list? And know How to Train Your Dragon villains yet? Well, let's start off with the Green Death. This dragon queen feeds off whatever her fellow dragon servants gave her.
It's like a giant beehive. They're the workers, and that's their queen.
However, if they don't give her enough food, she won't hesitate to just eat the dragon instead. After seeing Toothless fly off as an act of rebellion, she ends up antagonizing the Vikings, destroying their fleets, and trying to kill Hiccup and Toothless. She's pretty much the Godzilla of the dragons. As the queen, she's setting an example for all other dragons to follow, and to be as destructive and cruel as possible. She has no qualms with enslaving whoever she can to eat whatever she can, nor does she care about eating those who fail her. For the first truly evil dragon we saw, she definitely makes an impression. Up next, we have a classic biblical villain, King Ramses II. The pharaoh of his people, an enslaver of Jews, he ruled over them with an iron fist, more than happy keeping them under slavery. Even as Moses threatens plagues and delivers them to Egypt, Ramses kept his conviction and only gave in after his son died.
Leave me.
That said, his willingness to let them go doesn't last long, charging at Moses and the Jews as they left Egypt. He was only stopped when his army was swept up by the Red Sea. He's a classic biblical villain, and here he's pretty much the same, letting him get this high here on our list. He does grow up with Moses as an adopted brother and considers him as flesh and blood. However, even when he pleads with Ramses to let the people go, he straight out refuses, even if he's family.
Please, you must listen.
I will not be the weak link.
From Egypt to China, we have Kai the Collector, who was once a close friend to Oogway and was greatly injured. Finding some pandas that knew about Chi, he was able to be healed. Amazed by this new power, he starts to do research about it, only to get more and more greedy. Oogway made the fateful decision to banish him to the spirit realm, so he can't cause any more trouble. However, 500 years later, he's back and ready to continue.
Kai has returned.
Now, he wishes to destroy Oogway's legacy and get as much chi as he can, be it from the pandas or from the kung fu masters. He now plans on taking over the world, getting his own undead army to help him. His arrogance in believing that the pandas were responsible for turning Oogway away from him when it was his own fault only puts him further and further down the list.
We'll finish it here.
He definitely isn't someone to mess around with, and it definitely is for the better that he was taken care of for good. Now we have the enemy of children, Pitch Black. If the Guardians represented traditional holiday in kid icons like the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, this guy would be the Boogeyman. This foe knows the fears of all the kids in the world, and even the fears of the Guardians,
turning dreams into nightmares.
His goal is for the Guardians to all be forgotten and to plunge the world into an everlasting night of pure darkness. He loves scaring kids and using his fear tactics into making others forget all about the Guardians. The guy doesn't even fight fair. He sends his shadows out to attack others and attack from the shadows when he has a chance, like shooting Sandy in the back. He isn't even above such vile acts like stealing the powers of the Guardians to use for himself. He does have a motive, as if no one believes in him. He's gonna be forgotten. He also does have a fondness for his own nightmare army, and even has a brief moment of sympathizing with Jack.
I believe in you, and I know children will too.
However, this does little to distract from his dangers he nearly puts the world in. He definitely deserves to be forgotten, which we kind of failed at doing by describing him. Oops. At our fifth most evil Dreamworks villain, we have Drago Bloodfist. The so-called Dragon God, the first human villain in How to Train Your Dragon, has definitely made a name for himself for how cruel he is. He hates any and all dragons for destroying his village when he was younger, and instead of being fearful of them, decided to prove himself as superior to them.
You belong to me now.
He would later go village to village to rally more and more people for his cause of dragon extinction. To those that rejected him, he just burned down their towns with his own dragons instead. He brute forced his way to get where he is today. He dreams of global domination and is cold enough to kill his way to the top. He isn't above killing Hiccup to accomplish his goals, even enslaving and forcing Hiccup's own dragon Toothless to do the deed himself. Stoic and Volca were right on the money when they say that a man this ruthless was beyond reason. A man who hated dragons became worse than the very things he hated. Just outside the top 3, we have Galaxar.
Who dares to wake me?
This Megamind lookalike has invaded the planet, planning on conquering it. And for what reason, I hear you asking? Well, we really can't say, nor give or take any points for that. The only chance we get to hear his reasoning, his audio is distorted, and we can't hear him clearly. For all we know, he could be taking over the Earth just for fun. Honestly, that's a pretty real possibility. The guy ended up flat out destroying his own planet. He apparently didn't even have any reason for doing so. Now, while he may try to act and look nice for the humans at first, but even then, he still says that he's planning on destroying humanity.
I come in peace, mean you no harm, and you all will die.
Overall, he still committed planetary genocide and is more than happy taking over other worlds as he sees fit. Alright, here we go. The top 3. In third place, we have Shrek's latest and most dangerous foe, Rumpelstiltskin. In Shrek, this trickster makes deals with others in order to get what he wants. With Shrek taking his deal, Rumpelstiltskin ends up taking the day that Shrek was born and becomes the ruler of far, far away. Under his rule, the place is deader than King Harold. The place is falling apart as he lives it up in his castle. He even uses what ogres he caught as slaves, and is more than happy to remind Shrek that he's gonna die in 24 hours and get erased from all of existence.
You were never born.
He may look harmless on the outside, and he lets his witches rave, and has a fondness for his pet goose. He also has a hobby of collecting wigs.
My angry wig.
However, once everything starts to go wrong, he doesn't hesitate to enforce control by not only threatening to kill them, but even going through with this threat by melting a witch with water. With just how dangerous he is, it makes sense that he would be considered the most evil of Shrek's enemies, and this high up. In second place, we have Lord Shen. This delusional peacock thinks Kung Fu is an old art form that deserves to be eliminated. Using the power he saw in fireworks at a young age, he tried to make a weapon to surpass Kung Fu, a cannon. His parents, not wanting their child to be as evil as he is, talked with a soothsayer to see his future. After getting a prediction about how he would fall to a black and white warrior, Lord Shen did the obvious thing and slaughtered as many pandas as he could. Getting rightfully exiled for his crimes, Shen just continued to make his cannon and threatens to destroy the entire history of Kung Fu with his weaponry.
Find more metal!
He proceeds to use his cannon to blast apart his opponents, killing Master Thundering Rhino and imprisoning other Kung Fu masters. He has no respect for the ways of old or for the people of the dead, and insists on just moving forward. His heart is stone cold to the idea of being reformed, shrugging off his parents' death and thinking about adding a dungeon to his basement.
I might also convert the basement into a dungeon.
He even rejects Poe's offer of being reformed. Even the Wolf Boss, who served under Shen, isn't as cold as he is, refusing to fire on his own ships, while Shen definitely is willing, even killing him in cold blood for disobeying him. With accounts of attempting to erase history, genocide of an entire species, and being happy with how evil he is, this foul gets second place as Dreamworks' most evil being. However, our pick for Dreamworks' most dangerous nightmare goes to Grimmel the Grizzly. Compared to Hiccup, he's essentially his villainous form. As the true villain of the franchise, he started out at Hiccup's age, finding a Night Fury like Hiccup did. However, instead of training it, he decided to slay the dragon.
But I'm in the business of killing dragons, not retrieving them.
Being a hero for this act in his village, he gets the idea to drive the entire Night Fury race to total extinction. Finding out about Death Grippers, he discovered their venom and managed to drug 6 Death Grippers into serving him, and him alone, thanks to using their own venom. He plans on not only killing Hiccup's Night Fury, but all of Hiccup's home if he doesn't give Toothless up, forcing him and the rest of the Burkians away.
I am the Night Fury killer.
This is just what Grimmel wants, however, and uses this retreat to find the other dragons, and forces Toothless to surrender to save his mate, Light Fury. This doesn't stop Grimmel from backstabbing Toothless and kidnaps her anyway. What puts him this high up is that unlike the other villains, he ends up succeeding. He does die, but due to just how heinous he was, the Burkians decided to not risk the dragons being harmed any further. and let them all hide in the hidden world until humans and dragons can peacefully coexist. It wasn't how he intended it, but he managed to fully turn the life of Berk upside down and force them to surrender their dragons. For being one of the very few villains here that accomplished his goals, even if it was in death, we're counting him as the most evil villain Dreamworks has ever created. And with that, our lengthy list has come to a close. Do you agree with our ranking? Make sure to check out our Dreamworks Heroes Good to Most Good video if you dug this one. Hit that notification bell, and most importantly, stay wicked.